Sydafrika. Vad producerar man för vin inom landet? Bör Sydafrika verkligen kallas nya världen? Och hur ser den gastronomiska kulturen ut? Jag heter Daniela Lund Egernäs och är sommelier. Detta är några saker jag hoppas kunna besvara i den här serien om Sydafrika som vinland. Jag har också tagit hjälp av vår svenska Master of Wine Madeleine Stenwreth. Det hon inte kan svara på när det kommer till sydafrikanskt vin, det är knappast värt att veta. Tillsammans besöker vi några producenter för att lyfta blicken mot ett land som vi båda älskar. Häng på!
Easy peasy.
Easy peasy.
Okay, should we start? Or?
Yeah.
Jag är på besök hos Jonathan Grieve, ägare av Avondale Wines i Paarl. Den vackra egendomen Avondale köptes av John och Ginny Grieve år 1997. Jonathan, som är deras yngste son, intresserade sig tidigt för verksamheten. Den första årgången under namnet Avondale producerades år 1999. Året därpå svepte en katastrofal brand ner för bergen. Ur askan reste sig nu möjligheten att omforma sättet som jorden brukats på till ett nytt, mer hållbart system för vinodling på gårdens 100 hektar. Jonathan kallar den för biologic och utgår från ekologiska och biodynamiska principer. Verksamheten är inte biodynamiskt certifierad, men metoderna som används har samma inriktning och nivå. En levande jordmån står i fokus och kretsloppstanken är tydlig. Jonathan berättar mer.
Yeah, are there many farms that are biodynamic in South Africa?
No, not many. There are a couple,
Yeah.
but it's definitely unusual. We started the progress of going more holistic on Avondale in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
In those days, if you told somebody your wine was organic, it was like a swear word, and most
Yes.
people didn't want to taste it. For us, it wasn't about being organic or biodynamic. It was about creating wines with a true sense of place, unique wines, and really that express where they come from. You know, for me, if you're using fertilizers and insecticides and commercial yeast and adding acids and sulfurs, etc., you're just really watering down what is uniquely yours.
Yeah.
And with us, what we're wanting to do is just take what our grapes are doing and what our soils are doing ultimately, and the microlife in the soils, and nurturing that through the process and into the bottle, that our clients and our customers can really enjoy that.
Yeah.
And hopefully have a little bit of bottled sunshine in your winter. Okay, well, the first wine that we're going to be tasting is our Jonty's Duck Speaking White. It's a white blend driven by Chenin Blanc, so about 85% Chenin, a bit of Roussanne, a bit of Viognier, touch of Semillon. How we make it's all hand harvested on the farm, so all our grapes are hand harvested. Bring it in nice and early in the morning. We do 100% whole bunch pressing, so really to preserve the natural acidity in the wine. Basically take the dirty juice from there into stainless steel, so about 70% is stainless steel fermented and aged. The other 30% we take into big old French oak barrels, so 500 to 600 litres. All of it's spontaneously fermented, all of it's aged on the lees between 9 to 12 months, with regular sort of stirring or batonnage in a barrel, of course. And then we'll sort of blend it up and bottle it and lay it down. So yeah, that's the Jonty's.
Also to mention that this one is on the shelf at the Monopoly in Sweden,
Yep.
Systembolaget. It's a perfect, I would say, a perfect house wine
Yeah,
to always have at home.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Enjoy it with all occasions.
Yeah. It's very, I would say, for the Nordic cuisine, you know, we have the salmon, all the fish and shellfish,
Yeah.
seafood. Perfect.
What's
Lekker.
that other cured one?
The cured one. Oh,
Now I'll put you on the spot, huh? It's not my turn.
yes, yes, cured one. I've
Doesn't
been
matter.
in South Africa and only thinking about braibrot. So, you know, all the Swedish food are like...
we've South Africanized you, have we? So obviously with each one of our wines it tells a little bit of a story.
Yeah.
So the Jonty's range, we have the white and the red.
Yep.
So it tells the whole story of the ducks on the farm. Of course, we're organic and biodynamic, so we don't use any chemicals. We'll look at towards nature and say, okay, how do we actually control a problem? We do lots of things in the soils and balancing cover crops and all of that type of stuff, but we're not perfect. We do have issues that pop up from time to time. So we'll look at it and say, okay, what is the natural predator for the problem? And we're wanting to be very specific. So the ducks are a great example. We had an issue with snails on the farm. And they go out into the vineyards and actually eat the snails as they go along. Obviously, I'll tell a little bit more of that story when we get into the vineyards. But yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're standing here at the duckmobile. So the whole idea behind the ducks is that they control the snails. So it's a natural predator. For snails, how we work is that we have an old converted reservoir, which we call a boarding house. Then we pick them up every day, every morning with the duckmobile behind me. You can see the ramp, and then they go up very excited in the morning, up onto the back of the trailer on the duckmobile. We bring them out into the vineyards. They'll go out, take 4 or 5 rows at a time, eat into the cover crops, right up into the vines, turn around like a tractor at the end of the rows, take the next 4 or 5 rows, and then they spend the whole day in the vineyards, and the evening again we pick them up and take them home to protect them. Obviously the reason why we do this is we've got lots of natural predators, so things like caracals and lynxes and jennets and even leopards on the farm, so we can't leave them outside at night time. So we need to take them back in. Of course, it's a great example of working with nature. So instead of using chemicals, we'll use a natural predator to control the problem. Any byproduct actually adds to the fertility of the vineyard, and there's no negative side. That's the most important. And of course, it's a great fluffy story at the same time.
Are they actually trained to take just to hang in the vineyard? So
the biggest thing to actually train them is not how to eat snails or go in the vineyards. The biggest thing and the trickiest thing is to train them to get on and off the duckmobile. That's about it. We often joke about it. They definitely got a bit of French blood in them. We don't have to even add any garlic with the snail. They just eat it straight out, shell and all. So that's the Jonties. The next white wine that we're going to be enjoying is our Chenin Blanc. So that's how it looks.
This is one of my favorites from South Africa, I must admit.
So obviously 100% Chenin Blanc. How we make it, all hand harvested once again. 80% is whole bunch pressing. And the reason for the whole bunch press is really to preserve the natural acidity. So we're not adding acid after the fact. We want that natural acidity to come through. So that's the whole bunch pressing. Dirty juice from the press into big French oak barrels and spontaneously fermented there, much warmer fermentations, and then aged in the barrel for the year. And we've got the saying at Avondale, we love barrels but we hate oak. So it's not about getting the oak, it's about getting the subtle breath of life into the wine, that micro-oxygenation that happens. You can't have a living wine without that. So that's why we like the barrels. That's the one side of it. The other 20% we do as a pure orange wine. So genuine orange, that's all done in our clay projects, so in our amphoras and our Kwv's. And they are so a whole bunch, hand harvested, everything, stalks, grapes, the whole works into the
everything into
the clay pot. Am I dropping you in? If you're keen, go for it.
Okay, so this is. Woo!
There we go. Are you in?
Oh, it's deep. Oh.
So obviously once we've been harvesting and it's fermenting in there, like you are, then we'll actually age it in there, and then once it comes out, we'll drain out the juice, and then we get somebody like you are in there with a spade and a bucket. You fill it up and you pass it out. So it's very manual.
You actually have people standing in here and
like
take them
exactly like you are. Yeah.
And then you put the lid on, and then
no. If they don't do what we ask them to do, then we just leave them in there. You got a nice clean shirt now.
Yes. Right.
So that's the winemaking in a nutshell.
As I just said, this is like one of my favorite wines from South Africa. Since it's super elegant, but you still have that texture in your mouth, and length of it. And this
Absolutely.
is like how long, do you have older vintages of this? Like how many? Like how does it age?
Oh, it's, you know, to me, Chenin Blanc is the most amazing white varietal in the world. And ageability, we did a recent vertical tasting of it from 2008 until our current vintage, 2018. And the best wines were the oldest vintages. So the ageability is phenomenal.
So buy them and keep them.
Yeah, exactly.
Or buy a few and then
you
know, if you can, you buy a few bottles and then you try them, you know, every year.
Yeah, and just see how they work.
This is one of those wines. If you go to a party or something, everyone brings a bottle of you know, you buy. This one will be empty very fast because
Yeah,
people
definitely.
love it.
we have that effect on braais, if you like. If you take a bottle of wine, it disappears very quickly.
Yeah, but this one will go very fast.
Yeah, exactly.
Lekker.
There we go.
Idag är vi på besök hos KVV i Parl, vad man skulle kunna kalla för vinemporium. Bredvid mig så har jag deras vinmakare som är ansvarig för all vinproduktion. Och ja, Justin, can you KWV, can you please tell us a little bit about the history of...
Yes, so KWV stands for Coöperatiewe Wynbouwersvereniging, which in Afrikaans, if you translate it, means Cooperative Wine Farmers Association. So KWV was established in 1918 as a cooperative. So in those days there was quite a problem with the oversupply of wine in the country, and a lot of the growers came together and formed the KWV as a method of managing supply and demand, and to be able to pool resources so that the industry could go forward. So KWV has been an integral part of the South African landscape since its inception, to such a degree that it became almost the regulatory body for the South African industry. KWV has now become a private company, and our shift has very much now been focused on our brands that are well loved around the world, and shift into developing a closer relationship with consumers.
So I'm sitting here with Justin, who is the big boss of all the winemakers at KWV. And we are going to do a tasting, and one of the first ones we will taste is actually a new listing. And it happens to be a Sauvignon Blanc from Swartland. This is a Cathedral Cellar label.
Yeah, so the Cathedral Cellar is a specific building cellar in the KWV complex, and is actually quite an important building for KWV and for the South African wine industry. It's quite impressive when you walk in there. It's got a lovely atmosphere, and when you walk in, you're almost awestruck with the impressiveness
like holy,
of it.
A little bit like.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And inside the Cathedral Cellar, it's got these wonderful old big barrels that have got very intricate carvings that each depict a milestone in the South African history. Obviously, KWV is very closely linked to the South African wine industry and its history over time.
Yeah, so we have to taste. Definitely textured.
The 2021 vintage, but spent some time on the lees and was only bottled towards the end of the year. So with the extended lees contact, we were able to get that sort of creaminess come through, and that length and finish that you want.
Daniela's actually already poured us. It's a Chardonnay.
So this is also 21.
Yeah.
This is the Kwv Classic Chardonnay. Within the classic range, we do all the main varieties. So we're looking for very typical varietal flavors that scream South African Chardonnay. And the grapes of this are throughout the Western Cape. And this is a great cellar in Sweden.
It is. And every time I very often do like benchmark tastings blind for people. And when this one ends up in that lineup, it has always proved itself super honest, very well made, and a surprisingly good value for money. Super pure, and it has that freshness and the crunchiness, and it's like serious but not serious. It's easy to understand, but it has some classiness to it, if you understand what I mean.
I think you've summed it up correctly.
I know that like KWV are pretty big on bag-in-box in Sweden. How does like a bag-in-box work in South Africa?
So the Swedish market has very much taken the lead with bag-in-box.
Yeah.
The Swedes have been open to alternative forms of packaging for a very long time. So we've always sent some of our best quality and best well-known brands in a box to Sweden. But the perception in certain other countries, like in South Africa, is that it's generally always been associated with more the entry-level wines. But that is changing quite dramatically. So we're quite excited that Swedish appreciation and enjoyment of convenience of wine in a box is now also coming through to South Africa, where we're seeing a lot of really good brands going into a box in a smaller format in South Africa. So we're quite excited as to how the bag-in-a-box market is playing out in South Africa at this point in time.
Would you say that can have something to do with the pandemic, with glass bottles was difficult to get a hold of and things like that, or?
Yeah, so I think with this whole COVID pandemic has really put the world on its head, and it's affected the wine industry in quite some dramatic ways. With the supply chain difficulties that we've had, glass is becoming quite difficult to get hold of the world over, and so that's in a way has forced us to go into alternative packaging, and so it's been a combination of factors. So then now we onto the next one, which is the Mentor's Grenache Blanc.
Aha. I think the first one was launched at like 10 years of age.
Yes, that's
like an 11 vintage, or if I remember correctly. I love the screw cap. To be honest, this wine would not have lasted so well with a regular closure. This for me, I'm so happy to see that you've gone that way.
I mean, the Mentor's range is one of our flagship wines at KWV, and we want the consumer to enjoy the wine as it was when we bottled it. And so that's why we've gone for screw cap, specifically on the whites.
Why on earth would you find a block of Grenache Blanc and put it into the bottle? What drove you towards that decision? Because I love the uniqueness of it. It's very unusual.
Grenache Blanc, one of the most undervalued varietals, and specifically in South Africa. With a little bit of extra treatment in the cellar, Grenache Blanc really comes into its own as it's a standalone variety, and that's kind of what we've done here. So this is the 2020, so still looking really fresh and young, and will definitely develop some more secondary complex flavors over time. Also, the older wines start getting a little bit waxy and oily.
Very waxy,
and
beautiful.
then it
shows already. It's going that way, like a beeswaxy honeycomb kind of characteristic. But now it's just hinting at it. But I remember the older ones, they are proudly pushing that forward.
And I think the underlying importance of Grenache Blanc is its natural acidity that it has, because it gives it that longevity. So we can see that interaction happen, whereas a lot of other varieties that don't necessarily have that acid, that fall apart much earlier. So you get that secondary flavor coming through without any compromise in freshness.
It's good, very good energy. It's a pretty wine, but at the same time it's super serious. Gorgeous wine. It's a breakfast wine.
When you say breakfast wine, I'm like having the Swedish breakfasts of like boiled eggs and what's the Kalles, what's it?
Kalles caviar.
Kalles, Kalles
the
and
smiley face.
Having that with this would actually be
would work, huh? Okay, so now we are moving over to bubbly.
So this is
Kwv Classic.
That's correct.
So can I just throw that in, that last year was 50 years of history of Kwv Classic. So South Africa has been an incredible producer of bubbly wine for 50 years.
And that's
like classic method, like the real way.
The real champagne method, which in South Africa we call method Kwv Classic, which is then abbreviated as MCC. And the first one was Simon Kaapse Vonkel. This is the La Brie. Thought it would be a great wine just to show and have a break between the whites and the reds. And bubbly is always good to refresh your palate on. I must admit, when I started at the KWV, my wife was really happy because I was coming back to a producer that has the Kwv Classic in their portfolio.
When I lived in South Africa, 97, 98, I drove to Grand Roche Hotel and I passed always Rudeberg Village. So there is a place called Rudeberg Village.
Yep.
How long has this wine been produced? It's like very, very long time.
1939, I think, was the first vintage.
The beginning of the Second World War. Wow. Puts
So,
things into perspective.
yeah, this is basically what KWV is known for internationally. It's one of our strongest brands, and was started by Dr. Charles Niehaus, who's one of the former chief winemakers at KWV. And he was sitting in his office, and the story goes that they were looking for a name for this new brand, and obviously from his office he's got a beautiful view across the Drakensberg Mountains, and when the sun sets they turn this wonderful red color, and he
becomes a red mountain.
So Rudeberg was born.
It's quite cool cellar.
This is a unique little store within the KWV. We keep some of our vintage wines. Our library collection is here. So we have some very old bottles here, which were very experimental, from basically the first chief winemakers in the KWV. So this is a 1937 KWV Malacha, which is basically a port style wine from 1937, and it's lot 79.
Do you know what grapes it is?
So we'll really have to go back in the library to see at 79, but in all likelihood this would probably be a Cabernet that would have been fortified.
Vi är tillbaka hos Nederburg Wines, testar Drostihoff för att se, och Neil, han lär mig allt man behöver veta om Braibrock.